Here are the top stories for today, May 27, 2020. The government resumed several projects under the Build, Build, Build program after the lifting of COVID-19 related restrictions. Malacanang respects the decision of several local government units to subject returning overseas Filipino workers to a new round of quarantine. The Baguio City government cites quality information in its successful contact tracing of COVID-19 cases. And Reservists in Cebu prepare food packs for the poor as their show of Bayanihan amid the COVID-19 crisis. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The government has already resumed some of the big-ticket projects under its Build, Build, Build program. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said several key infrastructure projects have been allowed to resume since they could comply with the construction safety guidelines imposed amid the COVID-19 outbreak. Works are ongoing again at the NLEX Harbor Link and the NLEX South Luzon Expressway Connector, Cavite-Laguna Expressway, Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3, R1 Bridge Project, the Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway Project, and the Subic-Freeport Expressway Project.
Kasi depende nga po yan doon sa mga proyekto na makaka-comply doon sa mga construction safety guidelines, including yung pagtatayo ng tirahan para sa mga manggagawa. Ilan lang po yan doon sa mga flagship projects na tuloy na po muli ang construction.
Malacanang on Tuesday said the deployment ban on healthcare workers may be lifted once the COVID-19 crisis ends in countries where they still would go. The POEA earlier released Resolution Number 9, which temporarily bans the deployment of all healthcare workers until the national state of emergency is lifted. Roque clarified that only healthcare workers with new contracts are barred from leaving the country. Labor groups expressed strong opposition to the deployment ban, prompting the IATF-EID to review the order and eventually permit medical professionals with perfected and signed overseas employment contracts as of March 8 to work abroad. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian on Tuesday sponsored a bill that would authorize the president to set a different date for the start of the school year during a state of emergency. Gatchalian filed Senate Bill number 1541, which seeks to amend Section 3 of Republic Act number 7797, or an act to lengthen the school calendar from 200 days to not more than 220 class days. Gatchalian said the immediate passage of the bill would empower President Duterte to move the start of the school year to September or even later to contain the spread of COVID-19. He said this would give the government enough time to ensure the safety of the country's more than 27 million learners. Malacanang on Tuesday said it respects the decision of some local government officials to let returning OFWs undergo a second round of facility-based quarantine before returning to their respective homes. In a Facebook post on Monday, Ormoc City Mayor Richard Gomez expressed frustration over the lack of coordination by the national government after his COVID-19-free city was surprised with a fresh batch of arrivals. Gomez said his city is willing to accept and isolate the returning residents, but emphasized that prior to returning to the city, the concerned agencies would have coordinated with them first.
Desisyon na po yan ng LGUs, pero mga LGUs fully tested po, negative po sila sa PCR testing. So baka naman masayang ang quarantine, pero we respect your prerogatives.
Filipinos are urged to stay home even after community quarantine. And NBI is set to probe the release of 2 suspects in an underground hospital in Clark, Pampanga. More on these from Benj Mondo.
The World Health Organization on Tuesday said that while people are waiting for a vaccine to be developed, staying at home after the community quarantine would prevent the further spread of COVID-19. In a virtual press briefer, WHO Western Pacific Region Technical Officer Takeshi Nishijima said apart from staying at home, people should also continue practicing physical distancing, regular hand washing, proper cough etiquette, regular disinfection, and most importantly, cooperate with the local government units for effective contact tracing. In other news, the National Bureau of Investigation will probe the release of 2 foreigners who were arrested for operating an underground hospital in Clark, Pampanga. The CIDG earlier identified the suspects as Hu Ling and Lee Sung-hyun. They were both released on the same day of their arrest. The hospital exclusively treated Chinese workers afflicted with a COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration will resume its livelihood program for distressed overseas Filipino workers. Returning member OFWs may receive up to 20,000 pesos as a startup or additional capital for the livelihood project. On Monday, the Labor Department said nearly 24,000 OFWs who have tested negative for COVID-19 would be home in the next 3 days. The department will also arrange land, sea, and air transportation for some 8,000 individuals each day. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Bench Bondok.
Still to come, the Baguio City government cites quality information in its successful contact tracing of COVID-19 cases. The Department of Agriculture in Region 3 celebrates Farmers and Fisher Folk Month. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Para labanan ang banta ng COVID-19 sa ating bansa, mahalaga ang kooperasyon ng bawat isa. Ang pananatili sa loob ng bahay ay isa sa pinakasimple pero pinaka-epektibong paraan para hindi kumalat ang virus. Kunwari, ikaw ang tuldok na ito. Malusog ka at malakas. Lumabas ka ng bahay. Ang hindi mo alam, may nakasalamuha ka ng may COVID-19. Tandaan, mahirap malaman kung sino ang may virus, pero madali itong maipasa sa iba. Pwedeng naipasa na pala niya ang virus sa iyo nung umubo siya o bumahin. O baka naman ay nahawa na dahil humawa kayo sa parehong bagay na kontaminado. Ngayon ay mayroon ka na ring COVID-19. Isa ka ng carrier na makakahawa sa iba. Dahil maaaring ilang araw pa bago lumitaw ang sintomas na ubo, sipon, hirap sa paghinga at lagnat. Pwede ring wala kang nararamdamang sintomas, ngunit nakakahawa ka pa rin. Pag-uwi mo sa bahay, maaari mong mahawahan ang iyong pamilya. Kasama na rito ang lolo at lola mo o ang mga magulang mo na may edad. Sila ang may pinakamahina na depensa laban sa virus. Ang mga may sakit sa puso, diabetes, high blood, at iba pang pre-existing conditions at mga buntis, mahina ang panlaban sa COVID-19. Kapag na-infect ang taong mahina ang immune system, posibleng magkaroon siya ng malalang karamdaman at kailanganing dalhin sa ospital. Sa patuloy na paglabas ng bahay at pagpunta sa pampublikong lugar, tinatayang maaari kang makahawa ng 3 pang tao at sila makakahawa ng mas marami pang iba. 20% ng mga nahawa ay maaaring maospital at dadami ng dadami ito habang mas kumakalat pa ang virus. Bukod sa dumaraming COVID-19 patients, marami pang ibang may sakit ang nasa mga pagamutan. Ang mga pasyenteng malubhang-malubha na ang karamdaman, hindi na maaasikaso. Wala ring lugar para sa mga pasyenteng may ibang karamdaman. Kaya nating iwasan ang patuloy na pagkalat ng COVID-19 kung iisipin natin ang kapakanan ng iba. Kailangan nating isipin at kumilos na parang bibit na natin ang virus para hindi ito kumalat pa sa iba. Sundin ang social distancing. At hanggat maaari, manatili sa loob ng bahay. Kung talagang kinakailangang lumabas, panatilihin ang 1 metrong layo sa ibang tao. Maging malinis din sa katawan at sa kapaligiran. Parating maghugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. At i-disinfect ang mga bagay na madalas hinahawakan. Ang mahalaga, mapabagal natin ang pagkalat ng COVID-19 para mas kakaunti ang mga kailangan magpa-ospital at mabawasan ang mga Pilipinong magkakasakit. Magiging epektibo lamang ito kung mananatili tayo sa bahay. Sundin ang social distancing. Isang maliit na sakripisyo para sa buhay ng kapwa nating Pilipino. Tulong-tulong tayo. Let's beat COVID-19.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Baguio City attributes its successful contact tracing to quality information. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong likened contact tracing to investigating a serial criminal offense, saying it was more than just a matter of identifying and listing people's names. He emphasized the importance of having cognitive interviewing skills among investigators to efficiently collect information, and that there should also be a seamless collaboration between law enforcement, investigators, and health authorities. Baguio City was earlier recognized by the National Task Force COVID-19 as a model local government unit for managing to keep its COVID-19 cases low.
Kailangan po natin malaman yung buong kwento dahil marami po tayong hinahabol dito. Paano na-infect itong tao na to? Saan galing yung infection? Ang dami po nating dapat alamin. And that's the reason why I keep on saying that contact tracing is very similar po sa pag-iimbestiga po ng isang serial criminal offense. Kaya hindi basta-basta pwede na lang kumuha ng mga ordinary na workers dyan at turuan na lang po yan, because they need to be trained po sa cognitive interviewing skills, pati ho yung mga basic investigation, kailangan matuto ho sila sa ganun.
Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta on Tuesday claimed that the embattled broadcast network ABS-CBN did not comply with the terms and conditions of its franchise, as well as with existing laws and the country's constitution. During the joint hearing of the House Committee on Legislative Franchises and the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, Marcoleta said ABS-CBN deliberately and with impunity violated the conditions of its legislative franchise, and more so of our laws and our constitution. He said the panel should deny the franchise application of ABS-CBN, noting that the network's previous franchise lasted longer than the constitutionally mandated 50-year period. Marcoleta also slammed ABS-CBN for its alleged political bias for certain candidates in the 2010 and the 2016 presidential elections and unfair labor practices.
My distinguished colleagues, hindi po nag-comply sa batas ang ABS-CBN, kaya hindi po sila pwedeng lumabas at magpalabas.
Other violations enumerated by Marcoleta include offering a pay-per-view service, Kapamilya box office channel, and the tax evasion schemes of the network. During the same hearing, ABS-CBN President and CEO Carlo Katigbak said that the network has not violated any laws. Katigbak said that while they are not a perfect organization, they are prepared to fix any issues of the company. In our business news, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III has called the proposed Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or CREATE, as a win-win situation for the government and businesses. In a virtual briefing Tuesday, Dominguez said the CREATE Act will not put to waste incentives being extended to businesses unlike in the past. He added that only industries that authorities consider to have greater impact on the economy will be prioritized. Dominguez said, CREATE ensures that the incentives to be given to investors are performance-based, time-bound, targeted, and transparent. If the proposed law is approved before Congress ends its session on June 3, the law will take effect by July, and this will lower the corporate income tax from 30% to 25%. This rate will be reduced by 1% annually until it hits 20% by 2027. Albay Representative Joey Salceda and Senator Pia Cayetano vowed to push for the measure's approval before their current session adjourns. The Department of Agriculture Regional Field Office 3 on Tuesday marked the Farmers and Fisherfolks Month through a photo exhibit and distribution of assorted vegetable seeds and seedlings. With the theme, Pagpupugay sa Magsasaka at Mangingisda Natin, tungo sa sapat na pagkain. The celebration hailed local farmers and fisherfolk for their relentless efforts and contributions as the unsung heroes of the agriculture sector. Regional Director Crispulo Bautista said the event also aimed to create awareness on food security and resiliency and to promote the implementation of the Plant program. He said different programs are made available to farmers to ensure enough food supply during this health crisis. During the said event, representatives from the different local government units also received assorted seeds and seedlings as part of the Ahon Lahat, Pagkaing Sapat kontra sa COVID-19. The Bicol Regional Diagnostic and Reference Laboratory has reopened and resumed COVID-19 testing after it was damaged by the onslaught of Typhoon Ambo. More on this and other news from the provinces from Chris Crismundo.
Testing at the Bicol Regional Diagnostic and Reference Laboratory for COVID-19 resumed on Tuesday after it stopped last May 16 when Typhoon Ambo damaged the exhaust duct at the roof of the facility. The damaged duct has been fixed, so the newly collected swab specimens would resume processing here. Meanwhile, 2 new RT-PCR machines donated by the Legazpi City government and a private donor have also been calibrated and installed by the supplier. As of now, the BRDRL does manual extraction, which takes about 3 to 4 hours for a batch of 30 to 40 samples on a 2-shift duty. In Cebu, 3 government banks are setting up funds to bankroll the Enhanced Countryside Development Program that will make the province self-sufficient in terms of food supply. The Land Bank of the Philippines, Development Bank of the Philippines, and the Philippine Veterans Bank agreed to bankroll the development projects for farmers and fishermen. Governor Gwendolyn Garcia and the executives of the 3 banks agreed to set up a startup fund of 20 billion pesos. Garcia stressed that the pandemic has taught the people the importance of food security and the need to build the capacity of local farmers and fisher folks. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment in Davao Region has disbursed a total of 163 million pesos to over 3,000 establishments under its COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program. Over 32,000 workers received 5,000 pesos cash assistance from mid-March until April 15. On the other hand, its Tupad Barangay Ko Buhay Ko program has already provided 52.8 million pesos to over 13,000 beneficiaries in the region. A one-time 10,000 pesos cash assistance was given to overseas Filipino workers through the Dole Kaaka program, while the social amelioration for the sugar industry released 800,000 pesos to 800 workers. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
Up next, Task Force Bangon Marawi answers Vice President Leni Robredo's remarks on the rehabilitation of Marawi City. And reservists in Cebu prepare food packs for the poor as their show of Bayanihan amid the COVID-19 crisis. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Mga mommies, pagdating sa COVID-19, dapat hindi tayo kampante. Bagamat hindi nakikita ang sakit na ito ay nakamamatay. At hanggang ngayon wala pa rin lunas. Kaya protektahan natin ang ating pamilya. Laging maghugas ng kamay, huwag hahawakan ng mukha, at manatili sa bahay para makaiwas sa sakit na ito. Tandaan, buhay ng pamilya natin ang nakasalalay dito. Let's hear this one.
Hi Caps! Kamusta?
Well, ito dahil sa COVID-19, medyo stress.
Okay lang yan, Caps. Napagdaanan ko din yan.
Ano kaya pwede natin gawin, no?
Kung nararamdaman mo na gulong-gulo ka na sa mga naririnig mo, sa mga nababasa mo, mag-pause ka muna, nakakahuminga ng malalim.
Buti na lang tumawag ka. Iba talaga pag may nangangamusta.
A strong body starts with a strong mind.
Tama. Let's heal us one.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Task Force Bangon Marawi has answered Vice President Leni Robredo's remarks, accusing the government of neglect and delay in the rehabilitation of Marawi City. This as Marawi commemorated the third year since the siege against terrorists in the city. More on this from Christine Lynn Viajante.
Task Force Bangon Marawi Chairperson and Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario claps back to Vice President Leni Robredo's inaction claims on Marawi City's rehabilitation. The chairperson said the other members of the political opposition took the third-year anniversary of the siege to criticize the government's efforts. He also stated that the Vice President's remarks are inaccurate and unfair to 56 member agencies that work tirelessly in the efforts of rebuilding the city. To add, the TFBM chair made sure that the COVID-19 pandemic won't hinder the task force from helping the internally displaced persons or IDPs.
Actually, ang ibigay natin, even meron tayong COVID, I think it was widely disseminated, yung pagbibigay ng iba-ibang ahensya ng tulong sa ating mga kapatid na mga Maranao diyan sa Marawi City. We provided 25 kilos of rice per family and 1,500 pesos in cash. Ito ay ibigay natin sa mga nakatira sa temporary shelter, hindi nga nakatanggap ng staff dahil hindi nakasama yung pangalan nila sa listahan ng DSWD. Mayroong mga livelihood assistance ang binigay ng ating mga ahensya ng gobyerno, pati ang DTI, even UN Habitat, karoon din sila ng livelihood assistance na ipinamahagi.
IDPs were even thankful for the support they've received in this trying time.
Nagpapasalamat kami lalo na sa Task Force Bangon dahil alam namin mula simula ng gulo ng Marawi nandiyan sila sa likod namin. So nagpapasalamat kami hanggang ngayon sa problema ng Pilipinas, sakala namin makakalimutan kami. Pero nagpapasalamat kami lalo na sa Pangulo. Talagang naramdaman namin yung tulong na galing sa kanila.
Meanwhile, to clarify, Secretary Del Rosario elaborated that rebuilding Marawi is not only in constructing physical structures, but also the numerous social, economic, health, educational, and peace-building interventions. For PNA Newsroom, Christine Lynn Viajante of PIA Iligan City Information Center.
55 companies manufacturing products to fight the COVID-19 outbreak have expressed interest to invest in the Philippines. During the virtual general membership meeting of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said these firms produce medical devices, medical supplies, and electronic components. Lopez added that there are companies affected by the pandemic or the trade tension between China and the United States that are eyeing to relocate or expand their operations in the Philippines. He further said investors eyeing to locate their facilities in the Philippines can take advantage of the European Union Generalized Scheme of Preferences Plus status of the country, wherein over 6,000 goods enter the EU market free of tariff. Lopez is optimistic that the country can get back to its economic growth momentum after this pandemic. The Department of Tourism has issued new normal guidelines for accommodation establishments amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the new policy, an establishment is required to have the guests complete a health declaration form upon check-in, to encourage online payment upon booking, and to conduct body temperature checking using a thermal scanner. Guests must be provided with reminder cards on etiquette such as the proper disposal of used protective gear and cleanliness. The guidelines also highlighted precautionary measures on physical distancing, hand cleaning, and respiratory etiquette, including use of disposable gloves when handling cash or documents. The practice of the mabuhay gesture as well as other forms of contactless greetings are also encouraged. Meanwhile, symptomatic guests must be confined in the room they originally used until trained transport providers are available. The DOT also reminded staff and personnel to avoid any discriminatory action against any sick person with high fever and/or cough. Like other frontliners, Army, Navy, and Air Force reservists in Cebu have displayed their Bayanihan spirit in augmenting government efforts to combat COVID-19. In the first half of May, the reservists produced about 73,000 family food packs at the DSWD Visayas Disaster Response Center in Mandaue City. DSWD Region 7 commended the reservists for their bayanihan in helping the agency provide family food packs for the poor. Regional Director Rebecca Giamala said they sought help from the partners to produce food packs that will help their needy constituents. She said AFP personnel are responsible and committed and have a sense of direction in doing their jobs. For his part, Colonel Ricky Bunayog, chief of the 7th Regional Community Defense Center, said the reservists feel that they could contribute to the development and well-being of Filipinos. The DSWD BDRC was able to mobilize 1,799 uniformed volunteers from both the reservists and the regulars of the AFP, as well as the Philippine Coast Guard or PCG. Let's now check out the latest COVID-19 updates from the Department of Health. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. The government resumed several projects under the Build, Build, Build program after the lifting of COVID-19 related restrictions. Malacanang respects the decision of several local government units to subject returning overseas Filipino workers to a new round of quarantine. The Baguio City government cites quality information in its successful contact tracing of COVID-19 cases. And reservists in Cebu prepare food packs for the poor as their show of Bayanihan amid the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check out more news content, check our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo. Good day.